Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about why using the scroll wheel to reset is so useful and what it is. I'm also going to share with you why using two different buttons to do your edits is so quick and why it's also really good. And finally, I'm going to show you how you can have the best of both worlds. Now, I want to point out that I'm still recovering from being sick, so my voice is really weird. I have a lot of phlegm and my nose is kind of plugged, so I may not be able to pronounce certain words really well. So without further ado, let's start. Now, first of all, oops, I have no mats. First of all, we want to talk about why doing the scroll wheel reset is so good. So let's say there's a wall here and we created a hole. Now to reset this wall the traditional way, you need to press the edit button. So in my case, it's going to be Q, and then I need to right click and then press Q again to close it, to confirm. So I have 3 steps that I need to do. Now, if you want to use scroll wheel, the first thing that you need to know is what happens when you bind what happens when you bind 2 actions to 1 button. So if I go over to my settings and to my buttons, you'll see that I have my reset build edit to Q and my building edit to Q as well. This means that my Q is actually doing 2 things. When I press Q on the wall, it does 2 things. It resets and it confirms or begins a build. Now, what I found out, or what I believe is happening, is that it actually resets first. So it does 2 things at the same time, but then it actually does the reset slightly faster. So by pressing Q, it actually resets and then try to edit or confirm an edit. So since I'm not selecting this wall yet, so I haven't selected this wall yet, by pressing Q, it tried to reset but couldn't reset because I haven't even selected the wall, and instead it will select the wall by pressing Q. Now if there was a hole here, if there is already a hole, by pressing Q the first time, it tried to reset but it couldn't reset because I haven't selected it, so it will select it instead, and by pressing Q another time, it will reset and then confirm. So there you go. So by binding 2 different actions to 1 button, you actually save 1 step. So previously you have to press Q, right click, and then Q again. Now by binding the reset and also the build to Q, it actually allows me to press Q twice to reset. So again, if there's a hole, by pressing Q once and second time, it does close. I did nothing but press Q 2 times. So I save 1 step from that. Now, if I want to make it even faster, by binding the Q button to my scroll wheel, that will make it even faster because it's very easy to do a scroll wheel with 2 clicks than to press a button twice. So yes, I can press Q twice to close stuff, but it's just a lot easier to use the scroll wheel. And this is really fast. And but you do need to assign another edit button to confirm, because if I were to, let's say there's a hole here, and if I were to try to confirm, I cannot use Q anymore, because if I use Q, it will reset then confirm. It does 2 things when I press 1 Q. So this means that I need to have a separate button to do the confirming. Now, a lot of people previously believed that you cannot have the scroll wheel on when you want to have 2 different keys to do your edits, because you can only bind, if you go to settings, you can only bind 2 different buttons on 1 specific action. And if you want to have them separated, you actually have to have another slot here at least. But what I did here is I actually bind outside of the game. I bind the button from my keyboard, which is Q, to my mouse scroll wheel. Now if you have an expensive mouse, usually it comes with its own software, you should be able to customize it to do whatever you want with the buttons on your mouse. So you might have like multiple buttons, and you should be able to assign your buttons to a certain thing, and in this case just assign it to your edit button. But for me, my mouse is really cheap, my keyboard is really cheap. Excuse me. So I actually got a third-party software which is called, let me see if I can pull out the name, which is called X mouse button control. Now I just Google, customize mouse buttons, and this is one of the things that I found. You can use whatever you want as long as it does the same thing. Make sure that it is, not a virus. So far I've been using this, there's no problem, but I wouldn't recommend it because I don't know that much about it. I read a little bit of what they have to say. It seems to be some kind of like a student project when they started doing this, and then it became what it is today, so I'm using it. But yeah, so if you have an expensive mouse, it shouldn't be a problem. If you're a good programmer, you probably be able to do it yourself through the computer. Now, in my opinion, I don't think this is in any way illegal, because unlike macros where you press one button and it helps you do one or two or more actions, so like by pressing one button it does two actions, you are actually essentially just pressing the same button with two different fingers. So you guys seen those keyboards that look really expensive, kind of looks like a glove. You are actually assigning keyboard buttons to that glove, and there is no, how do I say, it is pretty much the same thing. So there is no issue that I could see that makes this illegal in any way. Now, with that said, I want to point out why using the scroll wheel to reset is so important. Not only because it's really fast, and just to show you how fast it is, let me get rid of this RAM here real quick. Now, not like the fastest builder or the fastest editor, but this really helped me a lot since I don't have that much time to play. If I were to make this edit, it will break the RAM, but because I'm using scroll wheel reset, it actually allows me to save the RAM, because it resets so fast it didn't even have the time to break. This is also really good when you want to, let's say, fool someone. Let's say you make a hole, you shoot him, and you can quickly close it and open a different hole if you want to. Let me try and do that a little bit faster, yeah. So you can even make a fake. You can open up and close it immediately so that he fires and he breaks your ramp, and then you can shoot him for free or something like that. There are a lot of tricks and mind games involved, but you have to be fast, otherwise you can't pull it off. So this is why scroll reset is really useful, especially if you want to outplay people with your edits. Now, another reason is probably when people who don't use edits that much, they probably wouldn't reset if, let's say, he has a teammate here healing up, he'll just open, go out and start fighting. With scroll reset, it's a lot easier. Just look back and you can close it immediately. Just scroll up real quick. Now, with that said, the traditional way is also pretty good, because what you can do with the traditional way is that you can select it, you can right click and move forward and then confirm, and you don't even need to look back, so you don't lose momentum or anything like that, which is also really good. But it takes a little bit longer than to just close it like that. And I know like a lot of people get stuck in this situation where they have a ramp, let's say here, and they want to close the wall and they struggle because to close the wall is like you can't select it and then you don't know what to do. All you have to do is just pull out your wall edit and scroll wheel up. See? And then you can close it. So there's so many reasons why scroll wheel reset is so good. Now we're going to talk about double key editing. So the keys that I'm using right now is Q to start, because we established just now that you cannot use Q to end. If you try to use Q to end, let's say like that, if you try to use Q to end, it'll just close up, because Q is also a reset button. So therefore you need to have a separate button. In this case is my lower thumb button. Let's see what's the name that it gave it. So it's a mouse thumb button. So a lot of mouse nowadays has two buttons at the side. They usually do things in general usage like back and previous or something. So the lower thumb button is my confirm button. I feel like the confirm button has to be on your mouse. It's one of the easier way to confirm because you use your mouse to do the selecting. So you start and then you select, and it's just a lot easier to just select quickly and then use your thumb to confirm. It's kind of like rolling your fingers, you know, when you roll your fingers from left to right or from right to left. You just in this case you just you start and then you do a quick pattern design, and then you just switch over to your thumb to just confirm. And it's really fast if you get used to it. So just now when I was talking about the reset, I explained to you why it is faster, because you not only do you cut from doing 3 steps to 2 steps, you also put that 2 step to your scroll wheel, which is a lot easier to initiate. Now for this, why is using 2 buttons to edit faster than using 1 button to edit and confirm? Is because imagine this scenario. Let's say you're really fast, your fingers are really fast, but we all have limitations. So let's say each of our fingers can press the same button, I don't know, 4 times per second. Okay, 4 times per second. But if you have your starting edit button and your confirming button the same on the same finger on the same button, what will happen is that let's say your mouse, let's say Q is to start, and then you use your mouse button. So this will be a second button that you have to press, and then you use your Q to confirm again, right? So that means if I'm putting, let's say, 2 buttons, 1 and 2, 1 being the Q button, which I start my edit and confirm my edit, and 2 being the mouse button to select, I'm essentially pressing 1 2 1 to do 1 edit. So 1 2 1, if I have a lot of edits, I'll press 1 2 1 1 2 1 1 2 1 1 2 1 1 2 1. This means that I'm pressing 1 twice as much as 2, and I'm pressing 1 twice as fast as 2. If we all have that limitation where we can only press or use any of our fingers to press a certain button 4 times per second, that means in 1 second, the most edits that I can do is 2 edits at a time, because I need to press 1 2 1, so that's 2 ones, and then 1 2 1 again, so that's 4 ones and 1 second. So I only can do 2 edits. Now if you assign the confirm button as a separate button, which you're gonna use by a separate finger, then potentially you can do 4 edits per second, and that is why it's a lot faster. Now I've been playing this game since season 4, and I started adapting to this when someone, I forgot what's his name, I want to give credit to him, but I really don't remember his name. He started the whole 2 button edit thing, and I tried it. The moment I tried it, the first time when I did an edit, it felt right. In my mind was like, yeah, this is the way you should edit, because you don't have to spam on a single button that many times. It's a lot faster. So immediately after the next day, after that came out and after I learned it, and then immediately the next day, I also found a way to do the reset. So I'm actually been using this method or this setting for a very long time. Only recently I find that people start figuring out and people are starting to use it. So I decided to share it as well, so that you guys, whoever it is that sees this video, knows how it works. So now you know why having 2 different buttons to start and confirm an edit is so much faster. If possible, I'll try to look for the YouTube video of those pros doing it, and some people who claim that they are the fastest editor in the game, how they do it. And yeah, and hopefully it will convince you to try and adapt to this new meta where you use 2 different keys to do edits, and you use the scroll wheel to reset. However, there is a drawback. Now the drawback is if you are a professional player and you basically go out for tournaments and you have to play on a specific PC, you could bring your own keyboard, you could bring your own mouse, but then when it comes to doing the settings, you kind of need to have that software where it allows you to bind a specific key from your keyboard to your mouse. So that would be a little bit hard. So you can't really do it like on the fly or something. Another drawback would be that you have to sacrifice your scroll wheel up. This means that if you're a guy that likes to use your emotes, you might find yourself being able to scroll one direction, but when you have to scroll the other direction, you have to, maybe replace it with a button. And yeah, so it's going to be a little bit harder to adapt, and it's going to be a little bit harder to do things that requires to actually scroll wheel up. Now, since we're already talking about tips and tricks, sort of, I also want to point out that having your scroll wheel down or scroll wheel up, it really depends on what you're using for your reset. To use it to pick up items is very useful, because let's say you open a chest. To be honest, most of the time when I use that is to after a kill, you want to pick things up quickly. Just pull out your pickaxe and then scroll wheel, you get all the mats, all the bullets, and all the traps and whatnot. Another reason why I use the scroll wheel really often is for competition, when there's a chest and there's multiple enemies. Using scroll wheel, you can pick things up just a lot faster. So yeah, okay, that's pretty much it for this video. There's really nothing much else to talk about on my other keybinds. I do agree that you should have, if possible, have other keybinds on your mouse, but again, I'm using a cheap mouse, so it only has the two buttons at the side, and the left, right, and also the middle button. So I don't really have that much option. I prefer to have most of the things that I have to press on my keyboard. So I don't really have the freedom to move and edit at the same time, which is really good if you could. Also, I'm a left-hander, which means that I'm quite used to having my left hand do delicate specific stuff, which doesn't really bother me that much that I have to press multiple buttons at the same time, or stretch a little bit. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope it helped you, and let me know if you are already been using this or if you find it useful at all. Remember, you have to get used to it before you can really use it as great as the pros, but then it's definitely, at least in my opinion, definitely something worth learning. Thank you, and bye bye. Since I can't really face you, it's gonna be, I'm gonna buy you with my backhand.